What happens when a woman stops begging to be loved and starts demanding justice? This story is a masterclass in emotional manipulation, narcissistic betrayal, and silent transformation. Elara Vance once believed she had the perfect marriage, a powerful husband, a glamorous life, a shared legacy. But the most dangerous betrayals are never loud at first. They happen slowly through lies, humiliation, and emotional abandonment. What makes this story extraordinary is not the betrayal itself, it's the psychological rebirth that follows. Instead of collapsing, Elara studies the game, regains control, and returns stronger than anyone expected. And when she finally confronts the man who underestimated her, the entire city becomes a witness to what happens when self-respect wakes up.
Welcome back. If you know that real power is born from the ashes of betrayal, go ahead and like and subscribe. Let's get into it. The lights of Seattle's skyline glittered against the dark waters of Puget Sound, but they couldn't compete with the woman moving through the lobby of the city's newest skyscraper. Dr. Evelyn Reed carried herself like a force of nature, her architectural gown a marvel of sharp lines and dark silk. Every step was measured, a silent countdown to the chaos she was about to create. She had designed this entire evening, every detail calibrated with an architect's precision. Because tonight, at the grand opening of the Apex Tower, her husband, Damian Blackwood, had no clue she was coming. He believed Evelyn was the fragile, pregnant woman he'd left in their waterfront condo, the brilliant wife, shattered by his recent distance. But that woman was gone. Her grief had been forged into a blueprint for revenge. And tonight, Evelyn wasn't a victim, she was the architect of his downfall. The scandal she was about to expose would bring Seattle's elite to their knees. Because when a woman designs her own justice, the world watches. And Evelyn was here to collect on every lie with an interest rate only a broken heart can demand. Chapter 1. The Groundbreaking. The Seattle waterfront cut through the Pacific Northwest night, a string of city lights and forgotten dreams. From the 62nd floor of her new masterpiece, Evelyn Reed looked out at the city she had helped reshape. From her private office, the other towers were like crystals scattered on dark water. Every light was a story of fortunes built on shipping and tech. Evelyn had arrived 6 years ago as Evelyn Gray, a visionary young architect from Chicago, with a portfolio that silenced even the most arrogant developers. Her talent for creating buildings that seemed to defy gravity caught the eye of Damian Blackwood, the most powerful shipping magnate on the West Coast. Damian didn't just own ports, he owned horizons, with a logistics empire stretching from Anchorage to San Diego. Their romance played out across construction sites and black tie fundraisers. Evelyn recalled their first meeting at an urban planning forum, where her radical design proposal had shocked the entire room. He approached her after, his tailored coat fitting him perfectly. His ambition was a magnetic force, and when he smiled, Evelyn felt the entire room simply disappear. "The architect who wants to build a skyscraper that can touch the clouds?" he'd asked, his voice a low, confident rumble. I had to meet the woman with the courage to challenge the sky itself. Their wedding was the city's main event. The Seattle Art Museum closed to the public for their ceremony, with 1,000 guests flown in from around the world. Evelyn was breathtaking as she walked down the aisle, her dress a cascade of modern lace. The museum's main hall had been turned into a forest of white orchids and glass sculptures, with a cello quartet playing in the background. Damian waited for her, his eyes wet with tears, whispering, "My beautiful architect," as she joined him. A Washington state senator married them beneath a stunning glass installation reflecting the city lights. As they kissed, a silent burst of fireworks lit up the sky over Elliott Bay, a spectacular salute to their new life. The first 3 years were a perfectly constructed, sunlit dream. Evelyn opened her own firm, Reed Architecture, with an office overlooking the port. She specialized in designing landmark towers that redefined urban living. Her vision fused sustainable design with bold, futuristic aesthetics, bringing a new kind of energy to Seattle. The condo they shared was their first joint project. Evelyn had designed it as a sanctuary of glass and steel. Huge windows framed the Olympic Mountains like a series of epic paintings, and every piece of furniture was a classic she had personally chosen. Damien was the perfect husband during those golden years. He would surprise her with rare, first-edition books on architecture he'd found on his trips. He planned getaways to Tokyo and Berlin and celebrated every award she won as if it were his own. They even created a joint charity, the Blackwood Reed Foundation, which sponsored scholarships for young engineering students in Washington. "You're my foundation, Ev," he would tell her as they sat on their balcony, watching the ferries cross the water below. "Before you, I just moved cargo. With you, we are building an empire." Evelyn had believed every single word. She had poured her genius into his legacy. Her iconic designs had turned 3 of Damien's waterfront properties into architectural landmarks. His flagship hotel featured her Sky Suites, which offered unparalleled views of the city, while another property had a public green roof that changed the downtown landscape. Each building was a monument to her talent and her love for him. But betrayal often hides in the fine print, disguised as progress. The signs began as small fractures. Damien started staying late, blaming new shipping negotiations with Singapore. Their quiet dinners were replaced by urgent calls from his logistics team. Weekend trips were canceled because of last-minute port inspections and union disputes. Evelyn, consumed by her most challenging project, yet the record-breaking Apex Tower, didn't recognize the structural flaws at first. She trusted Damien completely, certain their marriage was built on solid bedrock. It was 6 months ago, while planning a surprise anniversary trip for him, that Evelyn discovered her perfect life was just a beautiful hollow facade. The trip was supposed to be a secret, a week in a remote cabin. Evelyn was on their shared account, looking for flight confirmations when she noticed a charge she didn't recognize from a private security firm, a small recurring monthly payment. Curious, she looked up the firm. They specialized in discreet personal investigations. Her blood ran cold. She picked up the phone and hired them herself, directing them to look into her husband. 2 weeks later, an email arrived. The subject line was simple, professional, and terrifying. It just said, "Report." Evelyn felt the air go thin as she clicked the file open. It was Damien, but he wasn't alone. A much younger woman with fiery auburn hair was with him, in pictures taken all over his yacht in the San Juan Islands. A trip he claimed was a solo fishing retreat a month earlier. She wasn't just an employee. They were kissing at the helm, her hand resting on his. They were sharing a bottle of wine on the deck at sunset. The world around Evelyn went silent. The city noise vanished. The glow from her monitor felt harsh and invasive. She was through a portfolio of her own private ruin. The woman, whose name was Nina, whispered something in his ear in one photo, and Damien threw his head back and laughed. A free, easy laugh that Evelyn thought was reserved for her. Then, in the last picture, the woman held up her wrist, showing off an expensive watch. A watch Evelyn had given Damien for his birthday. Evelyn closed the laptop. The soft click echoed through the silent condo like a hammer blow. She didn't weep. She just sat there, perfectly still as her entire foundation cracked. When Damien got home that night, she smiled and said everything was fine. But her mind had already drafted the blueprints for war. That night, lying next to him in the dark, she listened to his quiet, even breathing and began to sketch out a demolition plan. An architect knows that before you can build something new and glorious, you must first tear down the compromised structure. The affair was proven. But what would Evelyn do now? A. Expose him publicly. For 3 unbearable months, I lived a lie. To the world, I was Evelyn, the architectural prodigy, the happy, expecting mother and wife. Inside, I was just a woman quietly watching her world get systematically dismantled. Our mornings were a perfectly staged performance. Damien would wake before sunrise, checking global shipping lanes while I reviewed structural reports for the tower. We would kiss goodbye, and it always tasted like betrayal. But I had stopped guessing. I had proof. It wasn't about his phone or a new brand of aftershave he was wearing. It was the inconsistencies in his stories. The business trip to Vancouver when his jet's logs showed it flew to Palm Springs. I compiled these facts like an engineer checking for stress fractures in a bridge. Her name was Nina, and I confirmed it in the coldest way possible. I hired a private investigator after finding a charge for a $5,000 watch I never received. The investigator, a quiet man named Marcus, met me in a sterile cafe downtown. He greeted me with a look of professional pity I wouldn't fully understand for another minute. "Dr. Reed," he said, his voice low, "Mr. Blackwood is thorough." I managed a tight, brittle smile. "I know. That's why I hired you. What did you find?" The man took a slow breath. "Evelyn, maybe we should do this later." But I was already reaching for the envelope, my hand steady as I slid it across the cold table. A table I'd chosen for its of my rising tower. Damien was there, in glossy color prints. But he wasn't alone, and he definitely wasn't discussing shipping routes. Nina. I knew her name from the file. She was laughing, her head thrown back, as Damien stared at her with a look of unguarded devotion I once thought was mine alone. My world didn't stop. It came into painful, sharp focus. My phone buzzed in my purse, a calendar alert. Anniversary dinner, 8 p.m. The sound made them both smile in the photo, frozen in a moment of betrayal. Damien. The name on my lips was a quiet curse. It's a business charge. That's what he'd said, but I knew that tone's the same one men use for it's not what you think. A lie wrapped in a casual shrug, and I knew because I'd found the proof. Sienna was 26, a fact I discovered after a deep dive into her life. A brilliant interior designer who'd taken Boston by storm, landing a massive contract with my husband's real estate firm 6 months ago. She was stunning, of course, with that effortless charm of a person who's always gotten her way. She had eyes that saw right through you, and a smile that could broker any deal. "Sienna, I think it's best you head out," Grant mumbled, his voice tight as he adjusted his tie. "We'll touch base later." She gathered her portfolio with a slow, unbothered elegance, not even slightly rattled. As she walked past me, she paused, her gaze meeting mine directly. There wasn't any shame, no apology. Just a flicker of pity. "Ava," she said, her voice like smooth velvet. "I really am sorry you had to find out this way." And just like that, she was gone, leaving the faint scent of her designer perfume and the chilling certainty that she was the one who now held my husband's future. Grant moved toward me, his hands raised as if I were a spooked animal. "Ava, darling, we need to talk. This isn't anything serious. It was just what, Grant?" My voice was unnervingly steady, like it belonged to someone else. "A bit of fun? A fling? A distraction from our boring marriage?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. And in that second, I saw him decide that his next words would be another carefully constructed lie. "It's complicated. The pressure with the new tower has been insane. You're always so buried with the gallery." And there it was, the betrayal, followed by the twist of the knife, the blame. Somehow, this was all my fault. Somehow my ambition, my success, my drive to create something meaningful had turned me into the villain of my own story. I bent down to pick up my handbag, stepping carefully around the shattered pieces of my life. When I looked up at Grant, my eyes felt like ice. I wasn't the woman who cried herself to sleep over his moods anymore. I was someone new, someone he had just created. "When you get home tonight," I said, my voice perfectly flat, "my things will be gone. Ava, wait, we can work through this. I'll end it with her. We can try therapy. We can—" But I was already walking away, leaving him standing there with his hollow promises and the lingering scent of his mistress. That night, I didn't go back to our penthouse. I booked a suite at the Liberty, a hotel whose art collection I'd helped curate when I still believed in happy endings. I started making calls, first to my lawyer, then my accountant, and finally my sister in Chicago, who cursed in Polish for 10 solid minutes after I told her everything that had happened. The next few days proved the affair was only the tip of a much more treacherous iceberg. My lawyer, Marcus Finnegan, a sharp, no-nonsense man who handled Boston's ugliest divorces, called me to his office. What he laid out on the table in front of me made it hard to breathe. "Ava," Marcus started, gesturing to a pile of financial documents, "we've got a very big problem. For years, I'd kept separate accounts for my gallery and joint accounts with Grant for our home and investments. Or at least, that's what I thought. Grant's been moving money from your joint accounts into a web of shell companies," Marcus explained. "You didn't authorize any of these transfers, did you?" I just shook my head, a wave of nausea washing over me. From these statements, over the last 18 months, he siphoned off more than $3 million. And it gets much worse. Marcus slid a thick folder across the mahogany desk. Inside were loan documents I'd never seen, investment papers bearing my forged signature, and deeds to properties I never knew we owned. "It looks like your husband was using your pristine credit and your gallery's reputation to secure high-risk real estate loans. And Ava, a lot of these projects went bust." The room began to spin. I gripped the chair's arms as Marcus detailed the full extent of Grant's financial betrayal. "How much?" I whispered. "How much am I liable for? If these signatures hold up, you are personally responsible for nearly $8 million in debt you knew nothing about. $8 million. My own savings were less than $500,000. My gallery, my share in a few art pieces, maybe it was worth $2 million if I liquidated it all. Grant hadn't just broken my heart, he had systematically dismantled my entire financial life. And he'd used my name, my reputation, and my signature to do it. "What are my options?" I asked, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. "We can fight this. We'll claim fraud, forgery, throw the whole book at him." Marcus then removed his glasses, his professional mask slipping for a moment. "But Ava, Grant has the most vicious lawyers in the state. He owns half of this city. He has the capital to drag this out for years." That night, alone in my hotel suite, I poured a glass of Cabernet and stared out at the twinkling lights of Boston. The city I'd built my life in, the city I adored, now felt like it was mocking me. My phone vibrated. It was Grant, of course. He'd been calling and texting nonstop. This time, I finally answered. "Ava, darling, thank God. We have to talk. Please, just come home." "I don't have a home anymore, Grant," Ava said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "You leveraged it away behind my back." There was a pause. Then Grant's tone changed, becoming colder, more direct. "Ava, I know you're angry, but let's not make this any messier than it has to be. We can sort this out like adults." "Sort what out? The affair? The stolen money? The forged documents?" "Listen," Grant snapped, his voice now the weapon he used in boardrooms to demolish his opponents. "You have two choices. We divorce quietly, you take what's yours, and we both move on. Or you can fight me, and I swear to you, Ava, you will walk away with absolutely nothing. That is not a threat. It's a fact, Ava. You don't get how this town operates. You don't have my kind of money, my influence, my network. If you fight me, I will destroy you. When I am done, you will never curate another show in Boston again. Your name will be poison. You won't be able to hang a picture in a coffee shop." Ava squeezed her eyes shut. She could hear the muffled sound of a gala from a nearby ballroom, the cheerful music a cruel joke punctuating the ruin of her life. "Oh, and one more thing," Grant added. "Sienna's pregnant." The words hit Ava like a physical blow. She bent over, the phone slipping from her hand as the tears she'd refused to shed for weeks finally erupted. Grant's voice kept going, a tinny, distort sound from the fallen phone. "We're getting married as soon as the divorce is finalized. It's for the best. Ava, we've been over for years. We just didn't have the nerve to admit it. Sienna makes me feel alive again in a way you just haven't in a very long time." Ava snatched the phone from the floor, her whole body shaking. "Ava, are you still there?" "Yes," she whispered, her voice raw. "Good. Let's be adults." Ava wiped her eyes, stood up taller, and stared at the reflection of the Boston skyline in the window. "Grant," she said, her voice suddenly like steel, "go to hell," and she hung up. If you want to see Ava rise from the ashes of this betrayal, make sure you subscribe to our channel. This is where her fight begins. Chapter 4. A Flicker in the Gloom. The next 2 months were the darkest of Ava's 34 years. She found a tiny studio in Allston, a place that cost less than their old monthly wine budget, but it was all she could afford with her assets frozen by the court. The apartment was one room, a kitchen the size of a coat closet, and a view of a loud intersection. No skyline views, no concierge, no custom Italian furniture, but it had one thing the penthouse never did. It was hers. Mornings began with cheap coffee and sifting through legal documents from her lawyer, Marcus Finnegan. Her afternoons were a dizzying loop of calls, with artists backing out of shows, gallery partners avoiding her, and creditors calling for payments she simply couldn't make. At night, the city's neon signs and constant sirens bled through her thin blinds. Ava hadn't just lost a husband, she'd lost her entire career. Rumors of her financial ruin spread like wildfire through Boston's elite circles, and in a city built on reputation, a bad rumor is a professional death sentence. The modern art exhibition she'd been curating for the museum, her dream project, had been indefinitely postponed after the key sponsors withdrew. Piece by piece, 5 years of relentless hard work was being erased. But the nights were always the worst. Alone in the dark apartment, with only the rattle of the old window unit for company, Ava was ambushed by the memories she spent all day trying to escape. The image of the necklace on Sienna's Instagram played on a torturous loop in her mind, each detail sharper than the last. The way Grant had lied so easily about the charge, the way Sienna had tagged the picture from a resort in Nantucket, a trip Grant said was a solo retreat. They had become a real couple, not just some sordid affair. How long had this been their life? Months? A year? They were probably laughing at her while she was busy planning their future. They had mocked her faith in him while she was planning anniversary dinners, and they were planning their secret getaways. The questions were a venom, poisoning her self-worth. Ava stared at her tired reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror, trying to see what Grant saw in Sienna that he no longer saw in her. Was it her age? Ava was 34, Sienna only 26. Was it because Ava was an equal, a partner with her own scars and dreams? Sienna was new, uncomplicated, a blank canvas. Or maybe, the most crushing thought of all, maybe Grant was right. Maybe Ava had been so obsessed with building her own legacies that she'd forgotten how to be the kind of wife he wanted. Was this all her fault? It is the kind of 3 thought that breaks a person's, the toxic whisper that says you're to blame for your own betrayal. Rita had started drinking not out of control, but like she was taking a prescription. 1 glass of wine with dinner turned into 2, then half a bottle. Soon, she needed the whole thing just to face the legal papers, which felt like they were in a different language. She ditched her makeup, her hair, and the power suits she'd spent a fortune on. Now she just lived in sweats and old t-shirts, looking more like a washed-up college kid than the savvy businesswoman she was. Her sister Carmen called every night from L.A., her voice torn between rage at Kane and worry for Rita. "Just come home," Carmen pleaded. "We can start over here. Dad knows people in the restaurant scene. You can get a fresh start." But going back felt like admitting defeat. Rita had come to Vegas with a fire in her gut and a mind for business. Going home meant explaining why the woman who conquered the Strip was crawling back broken. Rita stopped. "If you've ever felt your world completely crumble, let me know in the comments. We're all in this together." The wake-up call came when she was at her lowest. It was a chance meeting at a gourmet market in Summerlin on a Tuesday. Rita was in the wine aisle, trying to pick between a cheap Merlot and one that was $2 more, when a laugh turned her blood to ice. She froze, her hand in midair. She knew that sound. It was Kane. Peeking around a tower of organic chips, she saw them. Kane and Sophia pushing a cart overflowing with all the expensive food they used to buy. Sophia wore a stylish maternity dress, showing off her 5-month belly, and Kane's hand was on her back, guiding her like a perfect, loving husband. Rita ducked behind the display, hating herself for hiding, but she couldn't make herself move. From her hiding spot, she heard pieces of their conversation. "What if we grill that tuna tonight?" Sophia was saying in her soft, sweet voice, with that nice Sancerre we got. "Perfect," Kane answered, with a warmth Rita hadn't heard in years. "And hey, should we ask Leo and Nina over? I feel like we haven't seen them forever." Leo and Nina. Rita and Kane's best friends. The couple who were at their wedding, who spent holidays at their penthouse. People Rita thought were her family. But apparently, they were having dinner with Kane and his new life, as if Rita had just been erased. "Oh, I'd love that," Sophia chirped. "Nina was just telling me she can't wait to be the godmother." Godmother. The word hit Rita like a punch to the gut, stealing her breath. Nina, her maid of honor who cried with joy at her wedding, was going to be the godmother to Kane's child with his mistress. "Me too," Kane murmured. "It's funny how things work out. I never imagined I could be this happy again, as if his marriage to Rita was a jail he'd finally escaped." "Poor Rita," Sophia said, her voice full of phony sympathy. "I heard she's in some dump in North Vegas now." "Let's not talk about her," Kane said, cutting her off. "She's in the past. You and this baby, you're my future." Rita slid down to the cold floor, her back against the chip display as silent tears rolled down her cheeks. She thought finding out about the affair was rock bottom. She thought the financial ruin was the worst of it. But this was a totally new level of pain. This was realizing she wasn't just left behind. She was replaced, deleted, as if their 5 years meant nothing more than a footnote in the story of Kane's life. She stayed there, huddled on the floor, until their happy chatter faded as they walked to the checkout. She finally found the strength to stand, wipe her face, and leave the store without buying a thing. Later that night, in her small apartment with a bottle of cheap wine and a frozen pizza, Rita knew exactly what she had to do. She called her sister. "Carmen," she said, her voice unsteady. "Rita, honey, what is it? I saw him today, with her." A thick silence filled the line. Carmen knew who she meant. "So, how are you?" Rita really thought about it. Devastated? Yes. Humiliated? For sure. Betrayed? Absolutely. But deep under all that hurt, something new was bubbling up. "Angry," she finally said. "I am so incredibly angry." "Good," Carmen shot back, her voice like flint. "It's about damn time. Carmen, I need you here. In Vegas. When now? Tomorrow. As fast as you can get on a plane. What for?" Rita went to the window, looking out at the glittering lights of the Strip. This was her city, a place she almost fled in shame. "We're going to burn his entire world to the ground," Rita said, a cold resolve washing over her. "We're taking back every last thing he stole from me, and he will never forget my name." Carmen let out a sharp laugh, and in that sound, Rita heard the power of all the Reyes women who came before them. Their grandmother had raised 6 kids on her own after her husband left. Their mom built a company from scratch when their dad lost his job. Reyes women didn't just survive. They got revenge. "Now that sounds like my sister," Carmen said. "What's the plan?" A slow, dangerous smile crept across Rita's face for the first time in months. "Bring cash, your contacts, and get ready for a war." Carmenton showed up 3 days later, ready to be the general in this fight for vengeance. She had 2 suitcases, $15,000 in cash, and a plan she'd worked out on the flight. "Okay, first things first," Carmen said, making herself comfortable on the pull-out sofa. "We need intel. Everything. On Kane, on Sophia, his businesses, the real books versus the fake ones. And just how do we do that?" Carmen's grin was sharp, just like Rita's newfound determination. "I know a guy in Vegas. An old contact, a retired cop. He specializes in financial fraud and cheating husbands. And he owes me big time after I helped his parents out. He's the perfect guy for the job." Not even a week later, a file 200 pages thick landed on their coffee table. It was all in there. Photos of Kane and Sophia at quiet dinners, offshore bank statements, phone records that proved the affair had been going on for years. And the real bombshell, solid proof Kane had been forging Rita's signature on legal documents for the last 2 years. "Rita," Carmen said, staring at the pile of evidence, "this is more than enough to send him to prison for a long, long time." "I don't want him in prison," Rita replied, a fire in her eyes Carmen hadn't seen in years. "I want something better. I want poetic justice." If you think Rita is about to flip the script, hit that like button, because this revenge is just getting started. 2 weeks later, Rita strode into her lawyer's office looking like a completely different person. Her hair was styled, her makeup perfect, and she wore a business suit that screamed power. "Robert," she said, dropping the thick file on his desk, "I'm pulling the divorce papers." Robert Chen just stared at her, totally confused. "Rita, what are you talking about? This file could destroy him in court. We can get every penny back and then some." "Exactly," Rita said with an icy smile. "But we won't be doing it in court. We're going to do this my way." The new Rita Reyes had arrived 6 months after her world imploded. After meticulous planning, she was ready to step back into Las Vegas society. But this time, not as a victim. Step 1 was establishing a new base of operations. Carmen pulled a few favors and got them a loan for a stunning loft in the Arts District. It wasn't the lavish penthouse she had with Kane, but it was so much better it was a war room. The perfect stage for her comeback, where the victim becomes the victor. The loft was a converted warehouse with soaring 20-foot ceilings and huge industrial windows. Rita made the open concept space her home, her office, and her command center. Carmen filled it with sleek, modern furniture that whispered quiet power, but it wasn't just the apartment that got an upgrade. Rita assembled a team, a trainer, a nutritionist, a stylist. The goal wasn't just to look good, she was already beautiful. This was about building an armor of pure confidence, the kind you can only earn by walking through hell. Her hair was now cut short and sharp, accentuating her cheekbones. Her new wardrobe was simple, elegant, and projected success without saying a word. But the biggest change was on the inside. Rita had spent months doing nothing but studying Kane Archer's empire. She memorized every partner, every board member, every major investor. She went deep into his financials, his weak spots, his dirty little secrets. Like a general planning an attack, she mapped out his entire world. And by doing that, she found the one crack that could make the whole thing fall apart. It turned out Kane wasn't the business genius everyone believed he was. His entire empire was a house of cards, built on a mountain of scripted and shady loans between his own shell companies. It only looked stable because he was always expanding. Rita found out his whole operation was riding on closing one single deal to stay afloat. That deal was for a new $2 billion casino resort the city was taking bids on. It was going to be the biggest complex in Nevada, and Kane absolutely had to win it. And Chloe had the perfect blueprint to take it all away. For 5 years, she'd secretly poured her soul into Project Oasis, a revolutionary private island concept blending luxury with total sustainability. It was a design that would redefine the Miami coastline. She'd kept it from Marcus, saving the finished plans as a surprise. The irony was suffocating. The very project meant to celebrate their future was now the perfect weapon to absolutely ruin him. In just 2 months, she refined her pitch, called in favors from old colleagues, and built an entirely new firm from scratch. Her old life was gone. In its place rose Azure Legacy Properties, with her old mentor Elena as a partner and a team of hungry young designers. The name was a promise. Chloe was rising from the ashes, and she was ready to build an empire. Her comeback was set for the annual Miami Real Estate Vanguard Gala, held at the Faena Hotel, the exact place her world had shattered just 6 months ago. It was the perfect stage, filled with every major developer in Florida, to announce that she was back in the game. She arrived at 8 o'clock on the dot, fashionably late, creating a stir without looking desperate. She wore a jaw-dropping emerald green gown of her own design that shimmered like the ocean under the ballroom lights. The effect was immediate. A hush fell over the chattering crowd as she moved through it, greeting old contacts as if she'd only been on a long vacation. Everyone who knew her as Marcus Thorne's quiet, supportive wife saw it right away. This wasn't a heartbroken divorcee. This was a woman who'd found a strength that no man could ever give her. She had found herself again. "Chloe Sterling," said Javier Garcia, the head of the city's zoning board, doing a double take as she joined his circle. "I'm shocked to see you. I heard you'd moved back to California."
Leave Miami?
Chloe's smile was pure, uncut diamond. "Javier, darling, this is my city. I wouldn't dream of leaving. Not when things are finally about to get interesting." She never once said Marcus's name, but his betrayal hung in the air like the humidity. At 8:45, right on schedule, Marcus arrived with Sophia. Naturally. Now 7 months pregnant, she was clinging to his arm like a trophy he'd just stolen. Chloe watched them from across the grand ballroom. For just a heartbeat, she felt that old, familiar ache in her soul. Then she took a steadying breath, straightened her shoulders, and felt an ice-cold purpose flood her veins. It was showtime. Marcus saw her about 10 minutes later. Chloe was the center of attention, charming powerful investors, and laughing at a joke from Damien Croft, the city's most ruthless architectural critic. When Chloe saw that Marcus had finally spotted her, she held his gaze across the room and gave him a slow, serene smile, the kind you give a business rival, not the kind a shattered ex-wife gives. It was a smile that said they were equals from a professional who had completely moved on. Marcus froze mid-step, his champagne flute hovering near his lips. Chloe could see the raw shock on his face, the utter confusion, and then something else, the first flicker of genuine fear. This was not the broken woman he had abandoned. This was someone new. Chloe excused herself from her group and began walking toward the terrace, her path taking her deliberately close to Marcus and Sophia. Just a few feet away, she paused as if she'd only just then seen them. "Marcus," she said, her voice impossibly warm. "Sophia, how lovely to see you." Sophia physically recoiled, her hand flying to her pregnant stomach. Marcus opened his mouth, then shut it, struggling to find words. "Chloe, I wasn't expecting to see you here. Why not?" Chloe tilted her head, her expression one of genuine surprise. "These galas have always been crucial for my work. Speaking of which, Sophia, congratulations on the baby. You look absolutely glowing." It was a masterstroke. By congratulating her with such poise, Chloe neutralized all potential drama and cemented her position as the confident woman who had won. Sophia could only whisper a weak, awkward, "Thank you." "Well," Chloe said breezily, "I won't hold you both up. Marcus, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're both incredibly happy." And with that, she swept past them, leaving behind the faint, expensive scent of her perfume and the undeniable feeling that the world had just tilted on its axis. Chloe didn't speak to them again all night, but she could feel Marcus's eyes following her everywhere she went. She had him rattled, she had him confused, and that was exactly what she wanted. Chapter 6. The Blueprint. 2 weeks later, Chloe launched the next phase of her attack. The bid for the Biscayne Elysian Isles project was due in 6 weeks. Chloe knew Marcus had been funneling every dollar his company had into his proposal for months. She also knew, from a very discreet private investigator, that winning this contract was the only thing keeping his entire empire from imploding. Chloe secured a meeting with Isabella Rossi, the matriarch of the family trust funding the development, and the only person whose vote truly mattered. Isabella remembered Chloe's early work and had always held a quiet respect for her, even after the scandalous divorce. "Isabella," Chloe said, taking a seat in her penthouse office overlooking the bay, "I have a proposal that's going to change the future of Miami." For the next hour, Chloe walked her through the vision for Project Oasis. It wasn't just a collection of luxury homes. It was a self-sustaining paradise, blending stunning architecture with revolutionary green technology. Living seawalls to protect the coast, solar arrays that looked like art, and a zero-waste system that would set a new global standard. "It's audacious," Isabella admitted when Chloe had finished the presentation. "Extremely audacious. Do you have the capital to actually execute something on this scale?" "I have something better than capital. Isabella, I have conviction, and I have a team that believes in it. This isn't just a development deal for me. It's my legacy for Miami, the city that gave me my start and taught me that sometimes you have to burn it all down to build something real." Isabella leaned forward, her eyes alight with interest. "Chloe, this could retime coastal living, but the cost to build it will be astronomical." "I've been preparing this for 5 years," Chloe replied smoothly. "I have partners in Dubai, tech innovators from Silicon Valley, and exclusive access to materials that no other developer in Florida can source. I can do this, Isabella, and I can do it in a way that makes this project famous for more than just luxury." When Chloe left the Rossi Tower that afternoon, she had something she hadn't felt in months: authentic hope. Not the desperate kind of a woman trying to survive, but the fierce kind of a woman who had finally found her true calling. But the real challenge came a week later. Chloe was in her new office, finalizing the bid documents, when her phone lit up. The name on the screen made her smirk. Marcus. She had been waiting for this call. "Hello." "Marcus," she answered with the same cool professionalism she'd shown him at the gala. "Chloe, we have to talk." "About what?" A tense silence crackled over the line. She could almost hear him grinding his teeth. "You know what? I heard you submitted a bid for the Elysian Isles, and Chloe..." Marcus's voice dropped into a softer, more manipulative tone, the one he always used to get what he wanted. "Sweetheart, I know you're angry. I know I messed up, but this is just spite. That project, I've put 2 years of my life into it. My company's entire future is riding on it." A cold, beautiful calm settled over Chloe. This was the moment she had been working towards. "Are you asking me to withdraw my bid?" she asked, her voice laced with polite curiosity. "I'm asking you to be smart. I can make this right. I'll give you other contracts. I'll make sure you get other work. We can even partner on this one." Chloe laughed, and the sound was sharp and empty. Marcus, do you know the real difference between us? You build things so you can own them. I build things because they need to be created. And Miami deserves a legacy built on vision, not just on greed. Chloe, please. Good luck with your proposal, Puss Marcus. May the best vision win. And she ended the call. Chapter 7. The Groundbreaking. The Great Hall at the Vizcaya Museum had never witnessed such a stunning reversal of fortune. The same woman who, 6 months prior, had fled the city in humiliation now stood at the podium like a queen reclaiming her kingdom. It was the night of the annual Preservation Society Ball, the most prestigious event on the Miami social calendar. And Chloe Sterling had arrived not as the cast-off wife of Marcus Thorne, but as the celebrated CEO of Azure Legacy Properties. 3 days earlier, the Rossi Trust had officially announced that her firm had won the Elysian Isles contract. The $2 billion deal had not only made Chloe the most influential developer in the Southeast, but it had also triggered the complete implosion of Marcus's world. The loss prompted a forensic audit that uncovered the true depth of his corruption. The forged loan applications bearing Chloe's signature were just the start of it. For years, Marcus had been running a massive shell game, shuffling investor funds and hiding catastrophic debts. Without the cash infusion from the Elysian Isles project, his entire financial empire collapsed in on itself. Federal investigators had raided Marcus Thorne's development offices just this morning. He was facing accusations of fraud, bribery, and using substandard materials. His assets were frozen, his credit lines were cut, and his golden boy reputation was in ruins. But Ava hadn't come to the awards gala to watch her ex-husband's empire crumble. She came to prove that a woman could rise from the ashes of a public divorce and build something stronger and more beautiful than ever before. Her gown, by a new Miami designer, was a statement piece of architectural lines and shimmering fabric. The materials seemed to capture the light from the crystal fixtures, creating a stunning, almost liquid effect as Ava moved through the ballroom. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek knot, showing off the line of her throat and a pair of emerald earrings, a gift from her mother that glittered like sea glass. But her most striking accessory was the unshakable confidence she now wore. For months, Ava had worked to rebuild not just her career, but her sense of self. She'd fought her way back through therapy, rediscovered her own ambition, and learned to define herself not as Marcus' wife, but as Ava Reyes. That voice made her turn. It was Liam Sterling, the city's most respected investor, approaching with a glass of champagne and a look of genuine admiration. Liam. Ava offered her hand, and he took it warmly. "It's an honor to see you." "The honor is all mine, Ava. Your proposal for the Bayfront Tower was breathtaking, absolutely visionary. In 30 years, I've never seen a design that so perfectly captures the spirit of this city." "Thank you," Ava said, feeling a familiar creative fire ignite inside her. "This is more than a building to me. It's my vision for Miami's future. A future where our skyline is the most innovative and sustainable in the world." For the rest of the evening, Ava was the room's center of gravity. Developers, city council members, and rival architects all wanted a moment with her. They were eager to praise her work, ask about her vision, and discuss future collaborations. It was as if the whole city finally recognized the genius that had been there all along, hidden in the shadow of her marriage to Marcus. "Ava, I've followed your works since your university days," said Elena Vance, the legendary designer, as she approached with her husband. "I always knew you were the real talent. This new project of yours is going to change everything." "This is just the beginning," Ava promised, a smile playing on her lips, hinting at everything she had planned. "I have designs for 4 more towers over the next 5 years. We're going to prove that green architecture isn't a compromise, it's the future." And that S when she saw them walk in. Marcus and Isabel entered the gala like ghosts from a past life. Marcus wore one of his usual designer suits, but it seemed too big for him now, as if the stress had physically shrunk him. His eyes were shadowed, the eyes of a man running on fumes, and his trademark charming smile was a tight, desperate mask. Isabel, now 8 months pregnant, clutched Marcus's arm like a lifeline. Her designer maternity gown was exquisite, but it couldn't hide the deep anxiety in her face. News of his construction scandal had been front-page drama for weeks, and the pressure was clearly destroying them both. A strange sense of calm washed over Ava. For months, she had imagined this exact moment 100 different ways. But standing here now, she didn't feel the bitter satisfaction she'd expected. There was no pleasure in seeing Marcus look so broken, no triumph in the fear she saw in Isabel's eyes. Instead, she felt something far more powerful, complete indifference. Marcus had seen her. Across the crowded room, their eyes locked, and she could read an entire story in his gaze. Regret, desperation, fear, and a flash of something that looked like the past. He began to walk toward her. Ava excused herself from her conversation and moved toward the grand staircase, where a jazz trio was playing something smooth and cool. She wasn't running from Marcus, but she wasn't walking toward him either. She was simply occupying her own space, radiating a quiet, formidable strength. Ava. Marcus's voice was hoarse, like he'd forgotten how to use it. Ava turned to face him, her expression the polite, neutral mask she had perfected in front of the mirror. Marcus, she acknowledged simply. He just stood there, searching for the right words to say. The trio played on. The music filled the space between them, and the city lights glittering outside the massive windows created a gorgeous backdrop that only highlighted the raw tension of the moment. "You look," Marcus stopped, cleared his throat, and started over. "You look incredible. Different. More yourself than I've ever seen you." Ava tilted her head slightly, observing him with the cool curiosity of a scientist watching a specimen under glass. "And who am I, exactly?" "Powerful," Marcus admitted, his voice a raw whisper under the music. "Unstoppable. Like the woman I fell in love with 10 years ago. But even stronger." A tiny, humorless smile touched Ava's lips. It was a smile of pure acknowledgement, of someone finally hearing a truth they'd known all along. "It's funny," Ava said, her voice quiet but razor-sharp. "It took you cheating on me, trying to pass off my work as your own, and becoming a citywide scandal for me to finally see who I am when I'm not playing the supportive billionaire's wife." Marcus squeezed his eyes shut as if her words were physical blows. "Ava, I know what I did was unforgivable. I was weak. I was a coward. I ruined the only good thing I ever had." "Yes," Ava agreed, with a chilling kind of peace. "You did." The silence between them felt like a vacuum, as other guests laughed and chatted nearby, oblivious to the private demolition taking place. "Is there any way?" Marcus started, but Ava held up a hand, stopping him cold. "No," she said, her voice final. "You don't even know what I was going to ask." Ava smiled, and for the first time it was real, filled with a pity that was far more brutal than anger. "You were going to ask if there was any chance for forgiveness, any way to start over, any way to repair what you completely shattered." Marcus could only nod, his face a portrait of despair. "And the answer is no," Ava continued. "Not because I hate you, Marcus, and not because I want you to suffer. It's because the woman you betrayed is gone. She died in our penthouse the night I saw those paparazzi photos of you and Isabel. And the woman I am today deserves so much more than the shattered pieces of a man who only realizes what he's lost when it's gone for good." At that exact moment, as if summoned, Liam Sterling appeared at her elbow. "Ava," Liam said, completely ignoring Marcus. "I believe they're replaying our song. Would you do me the honor?" Ava gave Liam a genuine smile. "I would be delighted." She took Liam's offered hand and let him lead her away from Marcus, without a single look back, flowing onto the dance floor as the band began to play a classic love song. It was almost too perfect. Ava was dancing with a man who respected her, who championed her work, who saw her as a true partner, while Marcus was left standing as alone, watching them. Over Liam's shoulder, Ava could see Marcus, a motionless figure in the middle of the celebration, an island of regret in a sea of champagne. Isabel had joined him, her face tight with worry for him, but he didn't seem to notice her at all. His eyes were fixed on Ava, following her every move across the floor with the haunted look of a man finally grasping the full scope of his failure. "Are you all right?" Liam asked softly as he spun her gracefully past the other couples. "I am perfect," Ava replied, and was surprised by how true the words felt. "For the first time in so long, I am exactly where I need to be." The music swelled to a crescendo, and Liam expertly dipped her in a classic, cinematic move. Ava let out a laugh, a sound so pure and full of life that several people nearby turned to smile, and that S when the night broke apart. From across the ballroom, Ava heard a piercing cry. She looked over and saw Isabel bent in half, one hand clutching her enormous belly, the other clinging to Marcus's jacket like she was about to fall. A dark stain was spreading on the white marble floor beneath her. "Help!" Marcus screamed, his voice ripped apart with raw animal panic. "Somebody help her! The baby S coming!" The elegant gala instantly exploded into chaos. Guests pushed forward, some trying to help, others just gaping at the unfolding drama. Someone yelled to call an ambulance. The music skidded to a halt, leaving a sudden, ringing silence, filled only with gasps and Isabel's pained cries. Ava stood frozen on the dance floor, watching the whole mess unfold like a scene from a movie. For one long, strange moment, time seemed to stop, the man who destroyed her, terrified, holding the woman who had helped him do it. I watched the two of them facing a crisis that stripped them down to their raw human selves, and I felt absolutely nothing, no satisfaction in their panic, no desire to help, and no lingering need for revenge. Just a deep, profound calm. The quiet of a person who has finally completely turned the page. My friend Leo looked at me, his face etched with concern. "Should we do something?" I watched as security guards moved in, as my husband Julian yelled frantic, useless denials, as Isabel was carefully escorted out of the gala. I saw the real terror in both their eyes, the twisted love they had for each other in that moment of crisis, and how they clung to one another as their whole world fell apart around them. "No," I said at last. "They have each other. That S all they going to need." The security team started moving Isabel out, with Julian rushing beside them, whispering to her. Right before he went through the doors, Julian looked back one last time, searching for me. Our eyes met across the chaotic ballroom, and in his gaze I saw a silent question, a final, desperate plea for something. I gave him a small, deliberate nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was an acknowledgement that we had once meant everything to each other, an acknowledgement that the love we shared was real, even if he was the one who destroyed it, an acknowledgement that it was finally time for both of us to let go and just move on. And then he was gone, and I was left standing in the most beautiful venue in Miami, surrounded by the city's elite, with my entire future laid out before me like a blank page, just waiting for me to write the next chapter. "Well," Leo said after a long pause, "that was dramatic." I laughed, a deep, genuine sound that came from a soul finally set free. "You know, Leo, I'm done with all that drama. I've had enough for a lifetime. Let's talk about something that actually matters, like regenerative design and the future of the Miami coastline." Leo's face softened into a smile, clearly relieved. Now that sounds like a conversation worth having. And as the band started up again and the swirl of the gala resumed, I, Clara Vance, spoke with a fire in my eyes, outlining my vision to make Miami a new standard for eco-luxury. I described living shorelines that would protect the city, of saltwater greenhouses that would redefine what coastal living could be, of resorts that blended true opulence with ecological restoration. I was talking about the future. My future. Epilogue. High tide. My story didn't peak that night at the fundraiser. It crested 6 months later as I stood on the highest floor of my half-built oceanfront resort, watching my ideas rise in hurricane-proof glass and steel under the Florida sun. The project, once a dream to build with my husband, had now become my fortress, the tangible proof of a woman who learned to build her own happiness on a foundation of solid rock. Any woman who has endured that kind of betrayal knows this to be true. You don't heal from an affair by crawling back to the man who broke you into pieces. You heal by realizing you are more brilliant, more capable, more worthy than you ever let yourself believe when you were shrinking down to fit into his world. A world that never truly deserved you. I never spoke to Julian again. I heard whispers. Of course, Miami is a small town for the very rich. He'd been indicted for embezzlement. That Isabel had fled back to France with their child. He lost everything. The company, the penthouse, the respect. And I felt only a quiet gratitude for him, like I did for all the chapters of my life that were now closed. Gratitude because his lies had released me from a life that was too small for my spirit. Gratitude because his deceit taught me I could withstand any storm that came my way. And gratitude because by shattering my heart, he forced me to discover that my real strength was never tied to his love. For any woman listening, your story doesn't end just because he walks away from it. It begins the moment you decide to write an ending that is all your own. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about women who built empires from ashes, who turned heartache into architecture, and who proved that sometimes losing it all is the only way to finally win the life you were always meant to have. In Miami, a city that knows how to rebuild after the storm, Clara Vance proved the safest investment a woman can ever make is in herself.